Okay, while the computer is connecting to internet, okay, are there any questions? Okay, so let's take a quick look at homeworks. Your homework is due tomorrow, so we have updated problem set 3 due date, that's due tomorrow noon. Problem set 4. So some of you may be wondering why problem set 4 when we will have an exam. So I think that's, as I mentioned before, that's a good practice. So try to do problem set 4, and my guess is we will not grade that homework. So just do it for your own practice, and I'm not even sure if we will collect it or not. But even if we do collect it, we will not grade that homework. Okay, so but we may collect it still, even though we are not grading. There is a difference between my saying we will not collect it, that means you will not do it. If I say we will collect it but not grade it, then you will turn in something. So let's assume that we will collect it, and we are not likely to grade it, but it will keep the due date as it is. Okay, so some of you that so I know that some of you wondered about, well, by the way, the previous graded homework is here, so don't go away after the class. I will hand out graded problem set 2, but many of you lost some points because some of you just printed out the reports that are long. So I asked the Nanda to tell you how to find reports and how to write concisely what the report is telling you. So read this directory, read this file, analysis and reporting of results. So look at how to find those reports, what the grader is looking for, and how to find those reports. So next time when you find out what to report, so there is reported area, reported power. So please read this file on your own, and summary of results. That's kind of how you are supposed to report. Okay, so read this directory, read this file, read about how to turn in report of area, time and power from Verilog. So read this file under CAD lab Verilog. Okay, sometime by Friday we should be able to, I should be able to give you solution to problem set 3. So you can take a look at if you made any mistakes or not. Okay. Any questions before we jump into unfolding and start from where we stopped? Okay, so let's take a quick look at where we were. So last class I began talking about unfolding. We wrapped up. Okay, so what I wanted to do a little bit, since before I get to that, so let me briefly talk about, very briefly, about this problem set 2 interleaving. So in this problem 5, consider the block diagram of a 2 interleaved FIR digital filter shown below. So what does that really mean? It means that the input to this filter is really not one time series, but 2 time series that are feeding corresponding samples in consecutive clock cycles. So sample number 0 of time series x followed by sample number 0 of time series x prime, then sample number 1 of x, sample number 1 of x prime, and so on. Okay, that's what it means. So if I ask you what is the transfer function of this filter that we are implementing, so certainly the transfer function is not, if you write down this yn, that's a times xn plus b times xn minus 8, there is 3 delays here, 5 here, and then 4 plus 6, 10, and then 5 plus 7, 12. So let me show you the okay, so if you just write down the structure, what we have, that was yn is axn plus bxn minus 8 plus cxn minus 10 plus txn minus 12, but that's not the transfer function of the filter. Now think about each delay was replaced by 2 delays. So even though we have 8 delays, so 8 divided by 2 is 4, and then when we apply d to 2d, 4 became 8. Is that making sense? Okay. Anybody confused about that? Okay. So these kinds of concepts, I mean, that's essentially what we are learning, how not to be confused with what is delays mean, what clock cycle means. Clock period is not necessarily same as sample period. So what are the differences between a clock period and a sample period in an interleaved filter, in a parallel filter? These are not same. So understanding those is very critical. Okay, so once you got that, and then the question was asking you how to unfold that, derive 2 different structures for 2 parallel. So if we take this and derive 2 parallel filter, well, obviously you can write the equation as it was. Don't take this as 4, take that as 8, and then apply the equations, and you can get structures like that. So this is one structure. So there can be many solutions. Okay. So essentially when we parallelize the structure here, so think about consecutive cycles. We had sample 0 of x, sample 0 of x prime, and when we feed sample 0 to the even wire and sample 1 to the odd wire, it will so happen that the even wire will only feed x and the odd wire will only feed x prime. So essentially we will have 2 different filters, one filtering x, so that's this structure, and another filtering x prime. And so I gave the solution 1, so called solution 1, by simply using the unfolding algorithm, which you can apply on your own, or you can just have any number of solutions. So called solution 2 is a direct form solution for the filters x and x prime. These are two separate filters, one filter filtering x, one filter filtering x prime, and the solution 3 gives a transpose form or data broadcast form, and you can have similar circuit for x prime. I didn't show that, or you can have one of these and one of the other ones. It doesn't matter, there can be 20, 30, 40 solutions. We don't know how many, but there will be many solutions. Okay, so we may talk more about. So next class I will try to have a midterm exam review. So we will review some problems to help you prepare for the exam, and I will also try to place some sample midterms from the past in the weekend, sometime in the weekend. I am not doing that until you turn in your homework, because a lot of the homework problems are taken from old exams. So if I place those sample exams, you will quickly see the solutions. So I will post those only after the due date is passed. Okay, well, okay, so now let's get back to where I was. So last class we talked about unfolding in an informal way. Yes, go ahead.
For the exam, are we allowed to bring any notes?
Yeah, you can bring your notes, and usually in these kinds of classes, yeah, the lecture notes, the book are okay. Those of you who have book in the PDF, I don't mind if you just restrict computer access to the textbook, not to any other things. I think we probably don't allow old exams and solutions, but let's take a quick look at what the syllabus is saying, or maybe I'm not saying very much. Yeah, it says open book, open notes, but yeah, I didn't really say very much. Well, I guess let's take an exam from last time and see what that says. This is from 2 years ago, and as I said, the midterm solution. Let's see what it says. Well, it's saying that everything is allowed here. So, yeah, usually I try to restrict to homeworks and solutions, notes, lecture notes. Lecture notes are okay, but usually I say not to use old exams. Well, I mean, I have to make it a little harder, so you can't just copy. But maybe that's, we should still restrict old exams. I think that might be a good idea. I will let you know. But anyway, so that's kind of well, that tells you for a 75-minute class exam, typically there will be 5 to 6 questions. I guess that's for a 50-minute exam, maybe 3 to 4. Okay. By the way, I also must say that when I post sample exams, this is the first time that we will have midterm 1 only up to retiming. Usually all midterm 1s are up to folding, unfolding and folding, the next couple of chapters. So, so the old exams, if you see that, there will be, okay. So at least in this example, only the last one is folding, but otherwise unfolding. Okay, unfolding I did tell you that I won't ask in this exam. So, so you may read only up to problem 4 for the exam 2 years ago. Okay, bring calculator. Sometimes I may also allow using Wolfram to solve equations. Okay. equations like 1.2. Well, let's get back to the lectures from last time. So, okay, so we want to talk today more about unfolding in a formal manner. Okay, so how can we describe unfolding in a formal manner? So let's say that we have an edge u to v with w delays on that edge. Okay, so that says iteration I of u is a precedence for iteration I plus w of node v. Okay. So when do you think node v will compute iteration I plus w? So v0 is computing iterations 0, j, 2j, etc. v1 is computing 1, j plus 1, etc. So vl, let's say vl, node vl, where l can be 0 to j minus 1. Node vl executes iteration L in clock cycle 0. So V1 is executing iteration 1, V2 is executing iteration 2, and so on. Okay. So when will I plus W? Okay, so I guess we are asking really two questions. Okay, I should say that ui, iteration I of u computed by ui. So ui, so just like v0 is computing 0, v1 is 1, node ui will be computing iteration I, and again by same argument this I is from also 0 to j minus 1. Okay. So we have replaced each node u by j nodes marked u0 through uj minus 1. We have replaced v by j nodes marked v0 through vj minus 1. I am calling that vl, I am calling this ui. What we really need to understand is where will I plus w th iteration of v be computed and when. That is what we are asking. And in the informal case, it was easy to see where I plus w is executed. So iteration I plus w of v is computed by vl for l equal to what? What do you think l is? Any idea iteration I plus w will be executed by which node number of v? Any volunteers? Any volunteers?
V I plus LW.
I, no, let's say j is 8. Okay, let's say j is 8. So where will iteration number say 35, iteration 35 be executed by what? By V what? 3 after how many cycles? 4 cycles. Who said 4 cycles? Okay. So now, okay, now that you have an example, you can put those into expressions. So V L equal to what?
I plus W by J.
I plus what?
I plus W divided by J.
Mod.
Remainder I plus W remainder J. So that's I plus W remainder J. So divide I plus W by J and take the remainder, just as here we would take 35. So 35 divided by 8, floor is 4, that's that number. 35 remainder 8 is 3, and that's B3. Okay, so 35. So I can write I plus W. So I plus W is equal to so let's say that, so I can write 35 is equal to 4 times is equal to 8 times 4 plus 3. So I plus W is equal to 8, that's I plus W is 35, is equal to J times I plus W by J plus I plus W remainder J. Okay. Okay, so in general then, iteration I plus W of V will be executed by VL, where that's L, so that's L, and this would be after that many clock cycles. I said that wrong. That's L, and this would be the number of clock cycles. After that many clock cycles also means the number of delays. Okay, so so that's so we need to connect. So that says that connect UI to VL, and that L will be I plus W remainder J with number of delays, and that will be I plus W over J floor function. That's the unfolding. So if we have U to V with W delays, and that says, so we have completed the unfolding formal description of the unfolding algorithm by this one equation here. For every edge from U to V with W delays, place I plus W by J floor function number of delays on the edge from UI to V I plus W remainder J, and repeat that for I equal to 0, 1 up to J minus 1. Okay, so that's kind of that's all. There is nothing more. So the unfolding itself is finished by that one equation there. Okay, but that's not all. That may seem like that's all. But we want to understand more about theory of unfolding, and we'll spend time talking about that. But any question about this? Okay, last class, through simple examples, we saw that this particular approach to unfolding did not change the number of delays, and that is indeed true, because you can prove, or we can prove, that if you take all these edges from U0, U1 to Uj minus 1, and so if we add all these delays I plus W over J summed over all I, and that will in fact be the original number of del H W. So, so if you substitute I equal to 0, that will be W by J floor plus W plus 1 by J floor plus W plus J minus 1 by J floor is equal to W. Okay, you can prove that. Okay, so we are not going to spend time proving that, but and that says that we can prove that the unfolding preserves the number of delay elements. Okay, well, so last class also we began talking about how the loops unfold, and that's so sometimes the loops may lead to many independent loops, and sometimes they may lead to one huge loop. So, to really understand more about that theoretically, how do loops unfold? Okay, how do loops unfold? So, let us say that I have a certain loop in the original data flow graph. So, original data flow graph, let us say I have a certain loop that satisfies this inequality. So, the original data flow graph loop computation time is T L, number of loop delays is W L. So, we know that the iteration period bound T infinity will be the max of all loop bounds. The loop bound is T L, sigma T L. Well, okay, let's sigma well, I guess I don't need to use sigma. Let's just keep T L is the loop. Okay, so it's the sigma of all computation times of the nodes inside the loop. So I could put sigma T I for all I belonging to loop L, or just let's take that as T L. That's fine. So T L is going to be, so T L over W L is less than or equal to T infinity, because T infinity, which is the max over all L, T L over W L. So therefore, we must be able to satisfy that. Okay. So what we are interested in formally so I want to get an equation where we have, so let's say that I multiply, so I want to multiply certain A times T L, so is less than or equal to A times W L times T infinity, where A times W L can be written as B times J times T infinity. Okay. So, which can then be written as B times T infinite prime. So, we are saying that after unfolding A, each loop contains A instances of a node after unfolding. So, if we had one node A, after unfolding by factor J, we will have A nodes in one loop, and B will be the number of delays in the loop after unfolding. Okay. So, what do you think? How do we find these A and B for given W, L and J? So, given W, L and J, what are A and B? Any thoughts? Any thoughts? So, what I really want, so to give you a very simple example, let us say that WL is, let us say WL is 15 and we want to unfold this by factor, let us say 24 as an example. So, initially the equation was TL is less than or equal to 15 times T infinity. After unfolding, we have to satisfy so we have to satisfy something which is 24 times T infinity. What do I need to multiply to get something which is 24? Well, I can multiply 8 to both sides. 8 times TL is less than 120, 15 times 8, which is 5 times 24. So, this 5 is 5 times 24 is 120. We multiplied 15. So, we multiplied 8 to both sides. So, 8 times that is equal less than or equal to 8 times that, and 8 times 15 is 120, and that is 5 times 24, and then the 24 times T infinity is the bound of the unfolded program. We will talk more about that part. So, that then says A is 8 and B is 5. Okay. Now, it could be that I could have chosen any other factor. I could have chosen this to be 16, multiply both sides to be 16, and then this would be 10. If I multiply both sides by 16, this would be 10. But that is not something that we want to do. Why don't we want to do that? We want to multiply the smallest possible number such that the product after I multiply that A, that product A times WL, which is 8 times 15, 120, this is a multiple of J. That is what I want. I want to multiply as small a. So, a should be as small as possible. So, multiply a small a such that A times WL is a multiple of the unfolding factor J. So, I can write that B times J T infinity, and these two together becomes T infinity prime comma J. So, what really should be, so what is this A times WL is a multiple of what? J. What is the smallest a, so that A times WL is a multiple of J? Any thoughts? Go ahead. Least common multiple. So, A times, that is right. So, we are going to use some very primitive properties of least common multiples. So, A times WL, A times WL is a multiple of J. So, let us say that this is equal to the least common multiple of WL and J. Okay. So, what then is A? A then becomes is equal to least common multiple of WL and J divided by WL. Okay. Now, we know what A is. Okay. How many of you from your 6th grade algebra remember that if there are two numbers A times B, A and B are two numbers, A and B are two numbers, then how many of you remember that AB is the product of GCD of AB times the LCM of AB. How many of you remember that from your 6th grade or 7th grade algebra? So if I go back to the example I just had, 15 and 24, so what is the least common multiple of 15 and 24? Well, we just found that, that's 120. And the greatest common divisor is 3. So 15 times 24 is equal to 3 times 120. Okay. All right. So now, so LCM of, so if I just say from this equation, okay, I can write down LCM of WL and J can be written as what? That's WLJ divided by GCD of WL and J. Take this to the left side. The least common multiple is the product by the greatest common divisor. That divided by WL, WL cancels out. So A can be described in two ways. I can either describe that as least common multiple divided by WL or J divided by the greatest common divisor. Either way is fine. One of them, both are fine. Either way is fine. So, so if I now write down that loop inequality, okay, so let's see here. So we had this 8, so A was 8. So that is, so what is A? A is 8. So A can be written as either the least common multiple, which is 120 divided by WL, which was 15, which is 8, or can also be written as J, which was 24 divided by the greatest common divisor is 3. Either way you will get 8. So, so if I write down that equation now, so TL is less than or equal to WL times T infinity. So we now multiply A, which we saw is J divided, I am just using the GCD, the other one is fine too. WL and JTL is less than or equal to J times WL times T infinity divided by GCD of WL and J, and that is equal to WL divided by GCD of WL times J multiplied by J times T infinity okay. So now it says that every loop, so now we have a formal expression. So in last class I talked about some simple examples, but now we have a formal expression that says after unfolding each loop contains these many instances. Each loop, so J times that number, contains J by GCD of WLJ instances of each node and WL by GCD number of delays. That's the number of delays. So that's the number of instances and that's the number of delays. How many independent loops? How many independent loops? If each loop So, how many independent loops can be also done by two ways. We know that the total number of instances is j, right, total number of instances. If each loop has these many delays, these many nodes instances, so j divided by this would be GCD. That's the number of independent loops is going to be j divided by that quantity is going to be simply the GCD of WL and J. Another way to think about that, well, one loop contains these many delays, the number of delays does not change, we had total WL delays. So, how many independent loops? WL divided by this number, which is also the same number. So, J divided by this or WL divided by this is the same number. That is the number of delays, number of independent loops after unfolding. Okay, that is kind of how we can theoretically find expressions for these things. That is very simple to see through examples, but we want some mathematically rigorous theory that describes general case. Okay, so now we want to prove. Okay, so now we want to prove. So I have been saying that this is the iteration period bound of the unfolded program or the unfolded data flow graph. So what really is the iteration period bound? Okay, the unfolded program's iteration bound is going to be the loop computation time of unfolded DFT divided by the number of delays in the unfolded DFT. So, the loop computation time is this quantity, that is the total computation time, because that many instances, the computation time of the original one was TL. So, that is the loop computation time J by GCD times TL divided by the number of delays is that quantity. So, WL by GCD and the GCD cancels out. So, that is going to be J times TL over WL, and that is going to be, well, if I take the max, I have to put max, and if I put max of this is max over L, max over L, max over L, and that is J times T infinity. So, what it is saying that when we unfold a data flow graph, its iteration period bound cannot change, just like retiming cannot change the iteration period bound, nor can unfolding. It says that if you unfold, the new bound is J times T infinity, but in a time J times T infinity, we are executing J iterations. So, the bound per iteration, is still same. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay, so so I can talk about so just as we saw last class that in most cases we really are not just interested in pipelining or retiming, but we are interested in combination of both pipelining and retiming. So what I want to talk about is the combination of retiming and unfolding. So okay, we'll talk about. So let's spend a little time talking about. So let me take an example from the book and see. Okay, we'll take an example. I'm not really sure if that example is helpful. Before I talk about a theory of combination of retiming and unfolding, but let's just take an example. So let's say that we have this is example from page 131 of the book, figure 5.8. Okay, so we have A to B to C back to A, one delay here, one delay here, and we are given A takes 1 unit of time, B takes 2 units of time, and C takes 4 units of time. Okay. Okay, so what is the iteration period bound? The iteration period bound will be 2 plus 1 plus 4 divided by 2 delays. So that will be 7 by 2 or 3.5. Okay. So let's now assume that we will not. Let's just assume that this is executed by software by a compiler, and it's not implemented in VLSI circuit. And that means we will not assume that each of these nodes can be fine grained pipeline. That's the difference between hardware and software. Hardware, we have a lot of freedom to pipeline these computations. Software, these are compiled, code is compiled, assembly code is compiled by a compiler. Okay. So if we just draw the precedence graph, so the critical path now, so remove edges with delays. So that says the critical path is 6 time units, which is B to C. I removed edges A to B and C to A. Okay. So now retime this. What do you think will happen if I remove that? Okay, very simple retiming. So do a retiming across node B, node retiming, remove the delay from the input of node B and add to the output of node B, then the critical path is 4. That's A to B is 3, 1 plus 2, 3. C takes 4 time units, so the critical path is 4. Okay. Now, it so happens that in this case, we cannot reduce the iteration period. So that's the best iteration period that we can get is 4. However,
3, right?
A plus B.
Only A and B.
no. What about this? So the critical, so we have A to B and C, and this takes 3, this takes 4. So there is always a max node time, right? You have to look at that as well. Okay, so there is So the critical path is 4. So after retime, yeah. Okay. So so we cannot generate code to achieve iteration period less than 4. However, if we unfold this by factor 2, then we should be able to get an iteration period bound that will be 3.5. And why do you think that will happen? Why do you think? Because if we unfold this by factor 2, now essentially I will have a new program that executes 2 iterations. And so if I can, so now essentially I am trying to get rid of that factor 2 in the denominator by multiplying 2 to the number of nodes. So if we unfold well, let's do 2 things. Let's try to unfold this one. So we have A0 to B1 to C1 back to A0 with a delay, and then A1 to B0 to C0 to A1. Okay, that's kind of the unfolded. So let's call this G. Let's call this G retimed, GR. Okay, and let's call this G J, where J is 2. So that's the unfolded version of G. I also want to find out the unfolded version of the retimed one. So let's see what we get there. So we get A0 to B0 to C1 back to A0, A1 to B1 to C2, which is C0 with a delay, and C0 to A1. Okay. So it so happens that if you compute this, so this is a G R J. Okay. So it so happens that in both of these cases, the critical path is going to be 7. So the critical path, if you remove the edges without edges with delays, then we get 1 to 4, that's 7. So that's the critical path here. The critical path here is that path, and here that path, and here that path. Okay, so in each case, the critical path is 7 for 2 periods, 2 iterations. So the iteration period will be 7 by 2, which is 3.5, and that's the best we can do. Okay, so that's the advantage of unfolding. So if we have iterative data flow programs where the iteration period is greater than the bound, we may be able to reduce them. I am not saying we, there are conditions under which we can and conditions under which we may not. And so we may be able to reduce by unfolding, and of course then the question is how much do you unfold, and we can answer that as well. But let me just, I want to make one more remark. So if I start with the data flow graph G and I retime that and I unfold that. So I get GR and GJ, and then I unfold this one. So I get GRJ, and then I retime this one, I get GJR. Okay. So the question that we are asking, does it really matter if we retime and then unfold, or unfold and then retime? So does it really matter? So that's the question we are asking. Let's say that, let's just assume that it doesn't matter. Let's just assume, and we haven't talked about why it doesn't matter. But let's just assume that whether you retime and unfold and unfold and retime are equivalent. And I have not talked about why they may be equivalent, but let us just pretend for now that they are equivalent. Okay. Which one of these would you prefer? Which one of these would you prefer if they are equivalent? So, let us say that I have something like 100 nodes, and let us say I am unfolding by factors 20, let us say. Let us just as an example. So, what will be the time complexity? Unfolding is a simple linear operation, it does not really matter. The retiming cost would be what? The retiming cost would be order of n cube log n. So, that is order of 100 cube. Now, if I unfold this, there will be 2000 nodes, and that complexity will be order of 2000 cube. So, is it better to have order of 100 cube or order of 2000 cube? 100 cube. So, if indeed, well, we have not talked about why, but if indeed it was possible to first retime and then unfold, then it would be desirable to do that as opposed to unfolding and then retiming, because unfolding will increase the number of nodes by factor j. So, that means the complexity will increase by order of j cube. Okay, time complexity of the solution will increase by, but this is not trivial. I mean, this is not trivial. This process is not trivial. So, so the question that I am really asking is it possible to achieve a certain critical path? In this example, the critical path that we are asking is 7. Is it possible to achieve a critical path of 7 after unfolding by factor 2? That is what I am asking. But now, I am really asking the question, what is the best way to retime such that the unfolded program will achieve critical path 7. So, in the past we were asking the question, is it possible to retime to achieve a certain critical path C? Now, I am asking a different question, is it possible to retime this data flow graph so that the critical path will be C after unfolding by certain factor? So, I have not unfolded, but how can I still retime such that the target clock period will be C, not in the original data flow graph, but in the unfolded data flow graph. So, we now need to think about different constraint. Remember, I talked about the retiming satisfies two sets of constraint. One set is the feasibility constraint and the other set is the critical path constraint. The critical path constraint has to be modified now, so that the critical path of the unfolded data flow graph has to be satisfied, without actually unfolding. That is kind of what we are asking. Is it making sense? Do you understand the question we are asking? The question we are asking is, how do I retime a data flow graph such that it can achieve a critical path of C after unfolding by factor j? That is a different retiming question than the original retiming that we saw in the previous lectures, where we were asking the question, is it possible to retime this data flow graph to achieve a critical path C? Now, we are asking, is it possible to retime this data flow graph? So, the critical path is C after we unfold the retimed data flow graph by factor j. Two different questions. So, is it possible to derive a different set of critical path constraint? Is it possible to obtain a different critical path constraint? such that we can have now a retiming formulation that can guarantee a critical path C after J unfolding. Needless to say, that's not trivial. That's not trivial. Okay. Well, let's just talk about how to do that. Okay. I mean, that's the question that we are asking. So let's say so clearly what we are trying to do is not first unfold, we are trying to avoid unfolding. But let's say that I unfolded this by factor j. So every node has been replaced by j nodes, and let's say that the retiming variables that we get here are let me call this r prime. Let's call this r here and r prime here. Okay, this set r. Okay. So how many r prime variables are here? So how many r variables are here? If the number of nodes is n, so there will be this vector is of dimension n, and this vector will be dimension n times j, because each node is replaced by j nodes. Okay. All right. So so what I am going to prove? I am going to prove that given a r prime, let us say given a r prime, we will show that a certain r expressed in terms of r prime will satisfy the critical path constraint. So let's say that we have solved this problem here. We take the data flow graph, we unfold it, and then we find a retiming that satisfies the critical path C after unfolding. So I know what r prime is. We are going to prove that any r of certain node u, r of u, described as r prime of u I equal to 0 to j minus 1, will satisfy the same critical path, will satisfy critical path constraint after unfolding, j unfolding. Okay. Okay, so R u of G, R u, R of this is really R. So we have now, so we had n times j vectors, dimensional vector of R prime. Take all the j's corresponding to the j instances of node u, add them up, call it R u, and now we have taken n j dimensional vector and obtained a new n dimensional vector, and that n dimensional vector R after unfolding by factor j will satisfy the critical path constraint, assuming the critical path constraint has been satisfied by R prime. So that's what we want to prove. We want to prove that if R prime after unfolding, if R prime after unfolding satisfies this critical path constraint, then R must also satisfy the same constraint before unfolding. Okay, before unfolding. Okay, how do you prove that? Okay. So so we'll get to that. These are kinds of things that I should be assigning as homework instead of proving in class. That would keep your brain busy for a couple of days. It's always nice, believe me, it is always nice when the brain is kept busy. Well, you don't want the brain to be idle. Well, if you don't use your brain, it's easy to get dementia. So you can reduce the time to get dementia by 20 years if you keep your brain busy. Okay, well, that's okay. Okay, so let me start with some property here. So let's say that I have a path u to b with w delays. So let's say that I have a path with w delays, and then w is less than j. Let's say that w is less than j. What do you think after unfolding? What will happen to those paths? So there will be paths. Well. So if I have a path, let's say a to b with 3 delays, okay, 3 delays, what happens to that path after unfolding? So there will be a path from a0 to b, so let's say j is 4. So a0 to b3, a1 to b0 with 1 delay, a2 to b5 which is same as b1, a3 to b6 which is same as b2 with 1 delay. So each path u to v with w delays, and if I assume j, the unfolding factor j, is greater than the number of delays 3. How does the path unfold? We have been talking about how the loop unfolds, how the edges unfold, but how does a path unfold? So in this case, there will be w paths with 1 delay and j minus w paths with no delay. That's how the path unfolds. Does that make sense? Well, if j is equal to w, then every path will have 1 delay. If j is greater than w, then every path will have a delay. What we are more interested in is how do new critical paths form in the unfolded program. That's what we are asking. Certain critical paths that do not exist. For example, if you look at this one, well, this is not a critical path. The path is broken by these delays. But new critical paths can form in the unfolded data flow graph when w is less than j. So because there are 3 delays and I am unfolding by factor 4, these 3 will at best keep 3 paths with 1 delay in each path, and they won't contribute to critical path, but that's the one that will contribute to new critical path that does not exist in the original data flow graph. Is that making sense? Okay. So new critical paths can form after unfolding if the number of delays in the path is less than the unfolding factor. Okay. So how do you guarantee? How do you guarantee that the no new critical path? Suppose I want to guarantee no new critical path will form after unfolding. Remember, we are trying to solve the critical path problem without unfolding. I need to find r variables such that I can solve the problem G such that the critical path is met after unfolding. So what do I need to do to guarantee that no critical path will form after unfolding. What?
J is equal to W.
No, that is true. That is true. The number of delays should be greater than or equal to. So could be equal to, but doesn't have to be equal. Can be greater. So no new critical path after unfolding if W number of delays in the path u to v is greater than or equal to j. So, if I can guarantee, so if I can create a new retiming formulation such that for every path D which exceeds C, so remember we had two sets of constraints in the retiming formulation. One was the feasibility constraint, which is after retiming WR. So, here WR must be greater than or equal to 0, that is the feasibility constraint. And the second constraint for D greater D of a path greater than or equal to target clock period C, we guaranteed that the WR of that path was greater than or equal to 1. So, that is the retiming formulation. Now, the new retiming formulation, retiming for C without unfolding, all I need to do, well, we still need to satisfy, of course, WR is greater than or equal to 0, but for every D greater than or equal to C, WR of that path should be greater than or equal to J, because if I can guarantee that this is greater than or equal to J, then after unfolding each and every path will be guaranteed to have one delay and won't create any new critical path. And if the retimed data flow graph satisfies this constraint, then I know that I can meet the target clock period C without unfolding. Does that make sense? Okay. So, now that I have talked about that, now how do I prove that if the R primes are satisfying, if the R primes are satisfying the critical path constraint of the unfolded program, then how can I prove that the R defined by the sum of all R prime of the corresponding node will indeed satisfy this constraint? How do we prove that? How do you prove that? Okay, so that is not hard to prove. Let us see if we can get to that. So what exactly is in the R prime case? So, the retiming variable says what? The retiming, so retiming of the destination node minus the retiming of the source node is less than or equal to W for each edge, and for path greater than or equal to C, retiming of variable of the destination node minus source node of the path should be less than or equal to number of delays minus 1. Okay. So that is the retiming formulation. So, for the unfolded data flow graph, so if I take the unfolded data flow graph Gj, then I must have the equations R prime of the this should be R u minus v, right? W R Okay, this is U, P, U. Okay, so R prime UI minus R prime V I plus W remainder J is less than or equal to I plus W by J. So that's the first set of constraint. Remember, after unfolding we created edges from UI to V I plus W remainder J with these many delays. For the critical path constraint, we have R prime UI minus R prime V I plus W percent J is less than or equal to I plus W by J minus 1. Okay, so I am going to stop here, but essentially if you sum these two for all I, then we will get RU minus RV is less than or equal to W, and if you sum this over all J, this 1 will add J times and we will get W minus J, and that will be the retiming formulation for the original DFG. We will talk a little more about that next class. Okay, those of you who are here, I will hand out your graded homework. Are you able to see your grade now? I think the grade was out of, you will see the points should have been assigned to the problem set. So if you go to problem,